Good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you are watching this. So this video is going to be all about what we call fat burners, okay? And I'm going to specifically talk about a few that we use within the bodybuilding realm. So on any kind of diet phase where we want to pull off some body fat. And I'm going to specifically talk about yohimbine, clenbuterol, L-carnitine, and then I'm going to go into a little bit more about natural fat burners as well, as in caffeine based ones that you can typically sort of just buy on the market in the UK. And everything that I'm going to refer to in this video is obviously just from my own sort of anecdotal experience, from working with clients, from research that I've done. So all I'll say is, don't watch this video and then just take it as gospel that you now know all you need to know about these fat burners, these lipolytics. Now we call them lipolytics just based off the term lipolysis, which is fat burning essentially. So it's a term that I don't love, as in fat burning itself. Like, we don't burn fat, we mobilize fat, we transport fat, and we oxidize fat. And some of these lipolytics have different properties of those different processes of how we actually expel fat from the body. So we don't burn it, but I'll explain this in the video. But like I said, don't take any of this video as gospel. Don't take it as you now know everything that you need to know. This is just my own findings, my own research, my own experience from using these myself, from using them with clients, and just generally like learning over the years, research, and just my own interest in these lipolytics. Obviously, as someone who has competed myself several times, both naturally and assisted, as someone who has natural and assisted clients, and as someone who is an online physique coach and therefore has a responsibility of making sure I understand what these lipolytics do, what their properties are, their use for humans, and their side effects that I can let my clients know before they think about using them. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the video. I'm going to start with yohimbine. So to start with, what is yohimbine, okay? Yohimbine, it's an alkaloid, which means it's basically a natural compound, naturally occurring as a plant. It is from the yohimbe tree bark, okay? So it naturally occurs within nature. And actually, yohimbine can be used by natural athletes, so natural federations will accept the use of yohimbine. So, I've had natural athletes that use this. I use it myself. I'm using it right now on my prep actually as well. Essentially what yohimbine does, it's an alpha-2 receptor blocker. So your alpha-2 receptors, to put it a little bit more simply, they will decrease sympathetic nervous system drive. And if you don't know about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems, it's basically your fight and flight mode, okay? So sympathetic is when you're in fight mode, it's your adrenaline, it's your cortisol. And parasympathetic is when we calm down, it's, post-workout, it's your flight mode, essentially. So your fight mode is when your cortisol and your adrenaline is high. And this is what yohimbine will do. It will increase your adrenaline levels. So essentially, it's something that we take first thing in the morning. It's something that is going to increase your heart rate. You will notice that. And, if you're tracking your resting heart rate, you will notice that increase with use of yohimbine. So absolutely take it first thing in the morning. Typically, you'll take it and use it whilst you're doing fasted cardio. And yes, you'll notice an increase in your heart rate. Like I said, it's not really that great if you're someone that suffers with anxiety. It can elevate this. And just generally, if you find that you just don't get on with yohimbine, if you try it and, it makes you feel really anxious, that's not a good sign. Obviously, you don't need yohimbine. I don't think it's the be all and end all in terms of fat loss, in terms of what it actually does. It's sort of just like an additional extra. And a lot of what we do in bodybuilding is about finding those extra 1%. That's kind of what yohimbine is, in my personal view. So I wouldn't say, you need it, but it's just there. If you get on with it, it's just there. But do make sure that you take it fasted. The effects will be blunted when you eat, so do make sure you stay fasted. Be careful with what you consume around that. If you're doing fasted cardio, which I would recommend, if you are taking yohimbine, I would recommend to do fasted cardio and utilize what it's doing in terms of, promoting the fat release, okay? So it's going to mobilize the fat cells. That's what yohimbine is going to do. We're not burning fat. We're actually mobilizing fat at this point. And that's going to, be helpful while you're doing fasted cardio. Or if you can't get to the gym and do cardio, some form of, maybe getting your steps, doing some expenditure in the morning is going to really help. And then if you can just stay fasted for a longer period of time than you maybe usually would and just get the best out of it, that's great, because then, like I say, the effects will be blunted when you do eat. Typical dose would be 0.2 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So just as an example, if you were a 60 kilogram female, then you'd be looking at really a maximum of about 12, okay? So, I mean, I take maximum 10. I've never had a client on more than that. And that is why, because, you know, we don't want to overdose on it. So as like females, we're probably not going to be taking that much yihimbine. 10, maybe 15 is an absolute max. And obviously bigger, heavier men can take more. But that's a little bit about yihimbine, okay? So it mobilizes fat. It blocks alpha-2 receptors and increases your adrenaline. And this is kind of how it contributes to fat loss. So something to consider, but it's also just to be aware of, you know, how it can make you feel and maybe veer away from it if it is making you feel particularly anxious. Or if you're just someone who's generally quite sensitive to stimulants, you know, I would certainly recommend if you're maybe having a morning coffee, maybe pull that out for a little bit and just have the yihimbine on its own and see how you get on. And then, you know, later on in a diet when you really are super tired, you might take it with coffee then and have both together. But yeah, something to bear in mind. Okay, next up we have L-carnitine, which helps to transport fatty acids to be used for energy. So I've underlined transport because we had yihimbine, which mobilizes fatty acids. We have L-carnitine, which transports fatty acids. Now, L-carnitine, again, can be used by natural athletes. Very easy to sort of just purchase online. A lot of the time people will find it in powder form, pill form. I'm here to tell you that injectable really is the only real way that you're going to see any kind of like notable difference. It's going to be a lot more bioavailable. So in these kind of doses, 200 to 500 daily, that is where you're going to actually see a lot of the sort of effect of it, which would be to, you know, help with fat metabolism. So, you know, we use it in a bodybuilding prep or a diet phase to elicit a greater response with fat loss. So I've also got L-carnitine in at the moment at 200 5 times a week. So I have mine at the moment pre-workout, but that is because I am not doing cardio at the moment. Otherwise we can have it in pre-cardio as well. But yeah, if you're having it pre-workout, you will, I would say anecdotally, you will notice a difference in your endurance in the session, your overall training performance. Might get a sick pump as well, just saying. But I personally have found some great personal benefits from using L-carnitine with my overall energy levels across the day. So it's one of those where you can use it. You can honestly use it year round as well. People do. And you're going to notice generally like just benefits with your overall sort of recovery, energy levels, etc. That's what I would say anyway. So there's a lot that can be read into about L-carnitine. This is a very basic overview of what it is and what it does. But it's something that, so long as you're prepared to inject, you know, natural athletes can do that. It's not banned by natural federations, certainly not here in the UK anyway. And if you are sort of willing to inject, you know, using like a small insulin pen, then, you know, this is something that I would potentially look into, because genuinely, like, the differences I've noticed have been fantastic. So it's something that I would bear in mind, that it's something that you've got available to you to help with, you know, how you recover, how you perform in the gym, and also helping with that fatty acid transportation and therefore contributing towards better fat loss outcomes. Okay, so now we are moving to the not natty realms. We have clenbuterol. Okay, so if you take clenbuterol, you are no longer a natural athlete. Something to massively bear in mind. I myself robbed myself of my natural status in my second bodybuilding prep. I started taking this, and yes, unfortunately that meant I was no longer natural. I think sometimes people don't realise this, and then they rob themselves of that natural status. And if it is literally just a case of you're using something to help you with fat loss, you know, I've talked about L-carnitine, I've talked about yihimbine. We're going to talk about natural products in a second as well. There are other ways and means. And on top of that, just dieting harder, being in a deficit, managing your prep well. Like, you don't need to be taking clenbuterol. If that's the only thing you're going to take and it's going to mean that you're not natural, I personally wouldn't bother. But if you're an assisted athlete anyway and you've chosen to go down that route, then clenbuterol is going to be something that, you know, it's a strong thermogenic. So it's going to increase your metabolic rate and your body temperature, okay? It is a beta-2 agonist and it's used medically for asthma, okay? So that is something to bear in mind. Like, that is where it is kind of in common medical practice. You know, it's going to help to open those airways for people with asthma. For us, it's going to give us like a better capacity, like that better metabolic like capacity. If you think about it like that, it's going to have significant fat loss effects. So, you know, it's something that will work pretty much if you're going to use it. It's going to help you get leaner. And recent research does suggest as well that it helps with retaining muscle in a deficit. So this is why it's actually banned by natural federations as well, because of those anabolic properties. When people say Clen has anabolic properties, that's what they mean. It's not really necessarily going to help you grow muscle, and there are people that still dispute this. It's obviously newer research. There are some people in the bodybuilding industry that will say, oh no, like that's a load of rubbish, doesn't do any of that, doesn't help you to retain tissue, etc., doesn't have any anabolic properties. But the fact is, there are research studies out there, and you can look into them yourself and make your own mind up. But basically, this is why it's not just a fat burner, okay? And what Clen actually does is it oxidizes fat as well. So we've got the oxidation of fat, we've got the mobilization, and we've got the transportation. And at the moment, I am running Clen on my prep as well. So therefore, I've got sort of like the three mechanisms of fat loss. So it's not fat burning, it's transporting, it's oxidizing, and it's mobilizing, okay? So I've got three mechanisms at play there. Typical dose, anywhere sort of between 20 is like a starting dose. They'd usually be like half a tablet at that point. A lot of the time you'll buy like 40 microgram tablets, but anywhere from 20, that should say mcg, but yeah, anywhere from 20 to 120. I have personally ran 120 on my last prep. I'm a lot lower than that now. I'm not even half of that at the moment, but I have ran up to 120 before, so that would be typical doses. And when I say typical on all of these things, I just mean what's commonly dosed with these things. Obviously, some people might go lower or higher, but these are just kind of what you'll typically see. Make sure as well you're taking it fasted upon wake, because, well, for many reasons, but fasted cardio and steps, that's when you're going to want to utilize the Clen for its fat loss properties. So you're going to want to make sure that you do something with the clenbuterol in the morning, and you go and do some steps as a very minimum, or do your cardio if you've got cardio in. It's important to note as well, and I don't think maybe enough research or knowledge is out there about the effects that Clen has on, you know, someone's heart. If you do have any heart issues, certainly stay away from it. You know, I don't think we even know the full extent of what the effects can be in terms of risks for your heart. Just general anxiety as well, another one where if you start to feel really anxious on Clen, I wouldn't bother. Some people really suffer badly with the tremors as well, like we call it like the Clen shakes. That's something that I'll experience at first, and then I'll get very much used to it. It's very much kind of like this type of thing, and it can be pretty hard to, you know, go about your daily tasks and things like that. If you, like, depending what your job is as well, it might be, you know, I've had clients where they're like, I'm a makeup artist or whatever it is, and Clen really is making it difficult to do my job, so I'm like, well, leave it out then, it's not worth it, you know? So there's that to bear in mind, and maybe insomnia as well. Obviously, it's, you know, it's gonna give you that massive stim kick. So obviously taking it first thing in the morning as a priority, so you've got all day for it to at least start to come out of your system. But at the same time, if you do find that you're getting insomnia or you're not sleeping as well, again, it might be something that you want to think about taking out. It might not be the Clen causing you to sleep badly, but it's, if you are finding that your sleep's affected when you've started on it, it might be worth pulling it out, assessing, and going from there. But yeah, you would typically take it daily as well. So it's one of those things that, you know, runs as part of a diet. And then, yeah, we don't typically use it outside of a diet. It's usually just used in a diet phase. But yeah, like I say, for the reasons I've noted above, and it is going to have, you know, from what I've experienced and seen myself, pretty significant fat loss outcomes. So yeah, it's one where if you are assisted anyway, I would say, you know, have a think about it, have a look at the risks, and obviously weigh it up yourself. And with any of these lipolytics, it's all about doing your own research, knowing your own body, and understanding what you're willing to do and what you're comfortable with, chatting to your coach, all that kind of stuff, and making sure that you know what you're getting yourself in for. But like I say, I take all three of these. I'm perfectly fine with them. I've used them in multiple diets and preps. So for me, it's fine, but you've got to make up your own decision as well. So the final thing I'm going to mention with lipolytics or just general fat burning products is your natural caffeine based products. So there's a lot of things that you can just buy on the market. Obviously natural athletes can use, and typically they will just contain like standard caffeine as a main ingredient. And that is, you know, that is what people will look at when in just kind of like mass market, when they look at fat burners. When you look at the ingredient panel, it is often just mainly caffeine. Obviously this is going to increase your energy, it's going to increase your focus, and it's going to increase thermogenesis. So you're going to get hotter when you're taking it. You're going to find that, you know, you might take one of these products, you get pretty sweaty and hot during your cardio, and that is when to take it as well. You know, make sure it's pre-cardio or pre-workout. But a lot of natural athletes, you know, when they're getting deeper into their prep, they'll look towards something like CD Burn by Train by JP. They'll look towards this because perhaps as they're getting fitter and fitter throughout the prep, and they're getting more tired as well, both of these contribute to not being able to get the heart rate elevated as much. So what these products can do is obviously elevate the heart rate, as we all know caffeine does, and you know, you're going to find that you are then having an increased heart rate doing the same kind of intensity of cardio, the same effort levels, and that's going to help you to obviously, as a byproduct, burn more fat, so to speak. Obviously avoid close to bedtime, you know, we don't want to be up and wired all night. So ideally, again, it's like a first thing in the morning, fasted cardio type of scenario, type of setup. That's what I'd recommend. And I've put CV Burn by Train by JP. I know that's one that a lot of natural athletes use in the UK. It's pretty popular. And it also does contain, I think it's 1,000 micrograms of L-carnitine. Obviously that's in powdered form, so that's why the dose is a lot higher than what I mentioned previously would be like a typical injectable dose. But you know, obviously that's not going to do nothing. It's in there for a reason. And so you've got the L-carnitine in this product, which, like I say, is absolutely fine for natural athletes to take. And then you've obviously got, I think it's quite a high dose of caffeine, like maybe 300 milligrams or something like this, possibly even higher than that, but you can check the ingredient panel yourself. But so long as you're not sensitive to caffeine, obviously I would look at removing like a morning coffee and just having this, because it's a high dose in itself. But this is a sort of thing which can assist you further into a prep, like I say, to keep your heart rate nice and elevated, obviously to give you more cognitive function and spike in the morning, to get your energy levels up and help you through that tiring kind of early morning cardio when you are deeper into a prep. But yeah, that's pretty much everything covered off that I wanted to say in this video in terms of different sort of fat loss agents that you might have at your disposal if you are doing a prep or a diet phase. And it was just for your information, really. It was just to put a little bit of information out there, things that people maybe get wrong or they're not sure about or they don't understand. They've been asked maybe by their coach to take some of this and they don't know exactly what it is and what it does, which you should always have a conversation with your coach about anyway, and make sure that you fully understand what you're taking and what the side effects might be and what you're comfortable with, what the typical dosage should be, why you've been asked to take it, how it's going to help you in your diet phase. So make sure that you're really comfortable with all these things, and just make sure that it suits you and your goals. And ultimately as well, make sure that you are already nailing all of the variables. You know, your diet's absolutely on point, you're sticking to your cardio, you're getting your steps every day, your routine is nailed, you've already got a good sleep routine that these sort of things aren't going to interrupt. And you know, if you do find that any kind of side effects occur, you'll at least be able to assess properly, because you know you already are in a good spot and you already know your body and what's occurring, because you're consistent across the board with everything. So these are something to potentially add in down the line when you know you need that little bit of extra assistance. And obviously for myself as like an assisted athlete, I can utilize these things because you know it's one of those where it's kind of like I might as well have everything that I can at my disposal, because I'm trying to get absolutely stage lean, completely shredded. You know, these things in like maybe a typical diet wouldn't necessarily be important. You know, you might just want to consider the deficit with food and your cardio and your steps. But when we are trying to get to extreme levels of body fat within bodybuilding, that's why you'll sort of see these products in wider, more typical use. So just something to bear in mind, like what are your goals? What kind of a diet are you doing? Are these necessary? Can you do the diet without them? How are they going to affect you personally? And it's just something to consider. So I hope this video helped you to maybe just learn a thing or two, or at least consider a thing or two about some of these fat loss agents. And obviously, if you have any questions, please just reach out to me and ask. You can put them in the comments below. You can DM me on Instagram as well. My Instagram is linked in the bio below as well. And apart from that, I'll do more of these videos if you found it useful. So if you've got any topic suggestions, anything that you want to know as well, let me know. And I've got the whiteboard now, so I'll be able to do more of these type of videos. Thank you for watching if you got this far as well. I hope you appreciate the time that I put into this and getting it all ready. But yes, it's worth it, I feel. So I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao for now.